feel it boils down to what is your product strategy, first of all, as a leader, right? Like, are you able to build first like a compelling vision and a strong strategy that supports it? I mean, I've seen places where there is no strategy as well, right? Like, and it's very easy to not have a strategy. You just have a very high level headline vision, and
Correct.
then you just use that to say that, oh, okay, here's what I'm going to do. This is my roadmap. And then that's like a classic feature factory model kind of a scenario.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to Minimum Viable Podcast, a new podcast series brought to you by PM School. I'm Ankit. I'm the co-founder of PM School, and I co-host this podcast along with my good friend and fellow co-founder of PM School, Nikunj Sharma. Today on the podcast, we have a very special guest. We have Shweta Doshi. She has 18 plus years of product management experience, building companies, building teams, building products from the ground up. Previously, she was the co-founder at Grey Atom, an upskilling platform for data science aspirants. And currently, she's the senior director of product at Mindtickle. So welcome to the podcast, Shweta. Happy to
Thank
have
you
you.
so much. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here as well. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Shweta. Shweta, is this your first podcast episode, or you've done like bunch of podcast recordings?
I've done a few before this.
Oh shit.
So yeah, not the first one.
I was hoping this is your first, but okay. I hope this is the one you really enjoy though.
Yeah, looking forward.
So, Shweta, since Nikunj and I are building PM School, and you have built Grey Atom before, right? So, I just want to know from your context, maybe something which we could also learn. So, what were your major learnings from the time while building Grey Atom? And if possible, can you share some playbook or a framework, for founders in the edtech space, trying to build in the similar space, right? Trying to build similar products, and the state of edtech right now.
Yeah, a lot of questions. Let me start first with I think, why should you build an edtech company in the
Correct.
first place, right? Like, why does somebody feel that, oh, they want to impact the learning, right?
Absolutely.
The thing that at least I have learned, and the reason that we started building Grey Atom was outcome first, right? Like, we were seeing at that point a challenge in terms of people being unable to make transition into careers in data sciences, ML, all of this emerging stack. And hence, we decided to solve for that problem, right? So I feel that when edtech company has been started, founded with that outcome in mind, I think everything in that journey then will just follow through and make sure that that specific outcome is achieved. So I would say that's like the North Star before even you start the company, right? So I think that reason for starting your edtech must be super strong, which unfortunately I've seen a lot of other edtech in let's say a K-12 space not having that strong outcome in mind, right? And that's when then things just fall apart.
Correct.
So I would say that's the number one thing. And a slightly nuanced thing, I would say one level below that should also be, at least at the early stages, right? Like, you're not building your edtech for everyone, right? Like, you really need to identify who is the main ICP for this product, right? And that's true for any product, but from an edtech perspective, here you are asking people to do something and put in effort, and it's not a transaction that's going to happen, right? Like, it's like months of hard work, perseverance that you are also expecting from the other side. And
Yeah.
when that's not happening, and let's say you choose like an incorrect ICP and you just get people on board, but then they will not help you realize the vision that you had in mind of getting to that right outcome. So I would say, like, along with that outcome, who are you trying to get that outcome for, and are they really looking for that outcome is also super important, right? So again, like, early stages of Grey Atom, we focused on like one single ICP, which was developers who wanted to move to become data scientists.
Data science.
Right? Like that was our first ICP. And we thought that this was like an ideal ICP because they had all the necessary background, foundational skills in place. Now it was about, taking them to that next level. So they became our first ICPs, and then we expanded as well. But we were able to prove demonstrable success with this set of customers, right? So I think having initially, I would say, it's just better to build something that like a really small number of users will love than a large number of users will like only,
Absolutely.
right? Like that will help you build like a very strong moat. Second, I would say, yeah, be fanatic about learning outcomes, as we mentioned at the outset itself. On funding, I would say, go for funding only when you've hit your PMF well in edtech, right? Lot of times edtech can be built up as a business as well.
Correct.
And it's important to realize that, like, whether you're building a business or you're building a high growth scale up kind of startup, or you're building like a community that will eventually pivot into like a revenue generating mode. We don't know yet, right? So I would say early stages, like blowing up a lot of money before you have that strong hypothesis of PMF has, like, we've seen cases around as well, like then that causes a lot of challenge later on. And I feel organic growth and community again plays a big role, and you guys know this as good as what I'm saying right now as well, right? Like, because it's a great place to experiment new ideas, find the right mentors, demonstrate the value, take back, learn from the community as well. So I love how Scalar Academy built the interview bit first as a community, and then pivoted into being Scalar and what it is today. So I feel that just sets up a very right foundation on top of which an edtech can grow sustainably. So I would say those are some of my key learnings as a founder who's built this. And then if I talk about a founder who was product first, as I was building the product for Grey Atom as we were growing and all of the 5 years of the journey. So I would say from that perspective, really going deeper into how people learn the best. Like you really need to understand the adult learning psychology, get into the behavioral aspects of it as well. And as I said before, right, learning is not a transaction. So you need to make it more habit forming, and product has to do a lot of that heavy lift as well, right? Because, people are busy, they're doing so many different things. You're constantly fighting for attention, bringing them back to the learning as well. So a great insight into behavioral psychology of how people learn is critical. I also feel mentor relationships remain very critical to edtech as well. Whether your product is a SaaS product, pure SaaS, or you're running some kind of services combined with a product, but having strong mentors as part of the learner's journey who are intervening just at the right point to sort of take the knowledge at the next level, or motivation at the next level, or that outcome process at the next level. I think super critical for them to experience what is their journey going to look like from next 5 years perspective, right? And then finally, I would also say that in edtech, far too much importance was given on content so far, but I feel that context really is something that's way more important today, because content is just available. It's become such a commodity now, right? So the right context at the right time is again super critical for a learner's journey.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, based on all of these learnings, I would say interesting playbooks can be created. EdTech is going through interesting times right now in India, especially. So yeah, I mean, the problem that I see is that there are so many unsolved problems with EdTech, with education. Leave
Yeah,
alone, like, just leave the term EdTech out.
correct.
There's
Yeah.
so many unsolved problems
Good.
with education.
Yeah.
And there are so many of these companies trying to do different things, but I just feel that it's like a lopsided equation right now where the problems are increasing
Yeah.
and companies are not able to sort of solve for it all, because education inherently is a hard problem to solve. And I think education, that holy triad of scale, quality, uh, and the right price,
Correct. Yeah.
that has not been solved,
That's
and
not so.
it's a very hard problem to solve.
Especially
So
in India.
it'd be interesting to see who's able to crack it down.
For sure. So super interesting point, Shweta. I like how you said that in generally people will pick like a very broad segment. It's not like you're going after K-12. You need to figure, okay, this is a particular problem I'll pick and solve for a very niche cohort within that segment. And then like the interview bit example is like super helpful. And Ankit and I have spoken a lot about Scalar as well. And essentially, back in the early days when we started PM School, we were debating, do we sort of build for product for like anyone who wants to get into product? And finally, obviously, after multiple sort of experiments, we have realized we are essentially in the game of people who want to get into their first PM role, and that's it. Like super. And I can share numbers with respect to, let's say, 83% of our candidates of around 623 graduates in the last 3.5 years are engineers. So it's like a very niche cohort, 0 to 4 years. People who are trying to get into their first PM role, and out of like 83% of engineers, 47% of these are com science people, and these guys have like a tech background. They have had some peripheral exposure to product life cycle or product management, and they see, hey, product management as like a natural transition, and these guys do not want to go into their core tech profile, and they're essentially looking at transition closer to within the tech ecosystem only. So relate to that. Yeah. Cool. So I've seen how Grey Adam has obviously grown, and now you have transitioned into a product leader at Mindtickle, right? And this is like a very standard question that I ask anyone who's at a leadership position. How do you inculcate a product sense culture, right? And just to sort of like elaborate that, see, product intuition, and like you will see a lot of blogs, and for people who are trying to get into product, they'll just Google, hey, what are these 2 or 3 skills I want to sort of develop, get into product. You will come across this phrase that product sense or product thinking or product intuition, right? And sometimes some people have this naturally. But as a product leader, you will see when you have hired a team of, let's say, 8 or 10, and I'm pretty sure you know your folks and your existing team members. How do you make sure that there are certain strategies being followed so that product sense is at its highest, and respective folks, or it could be a factor of culture, or it could be certain things you have tried to implement to make sure all the product managers are following and do product life cycle, so different sort of parts of the journey, they are following certain rules or principles, if you have any and you can share.
Yeah. No, this is a great question, and I think I have a strong opinionated perspective, honestly, on this as well. And I've seen product roadmaps being built in different ways, right?
Yes.
I feel it boils down to what is your product strategy, first of all, as a leader, right? Like, are you able to build first like a compelling vision and a strong strategy that supports it? I mean, I've seen places where there is no strategy as well, right? Like, and it's very easy to not have a strategy. You just have a very high level headline vision, and
Correct.
then you just use that to say that, oh, okay, here's what I'm going to do. This is my roadmap. And then that's like a classic feature factory model kind of a scenario where I feel that the product thinking gets compromised, and, it becomes more project level thinking that, okay, now we've decided we are building 1, 2, 3, 4, and how will we get there, right? Versus, I feel if you talk about product strategy, right? Like, what does product strategy mean anyway? So I think it's like very clearly mapping out that here is where my business needs to go. Here is what we did last 2 years. And these are great things that have happened to us.
Correct.
Now, next year, if I have to grow at X rate, then these are going to be my growth levers.
Mm.
Right? Like, I may explore a couple of new verticals. I may go after, a stronger expansion with product 1, 2, 3 as supporting, or I want to go a little upmarket with a higher ARPU on 1, 2, 3 products. And then there is this blue ocean that I see that, probably no competitor is even thinking about it. But
Mm.
you know what? This is a great area, white space for us to expand in. What can we do about it? So not thinking constantly only about your red ocean strategy, which is again what a lot of people like, okay, competition is doing this, so you know
Correct.
what, therefore we need to go and do this. But what's your blue ocean
Mhm.
strategy as well, right? So when you think about all of this, you come up with certain levers for your company and for mainly keeping the customer at the heart of it, right? Like the personas that you're serving, and not just your economic buyers, but your users. So you're generating like deep empathy also in terms of, okay, what are their unmet needs even today? What will make them more successful? And like at the end of it, right? Like who who is your overall product serving, right? Like
Correct.
at who's that large base that your product is serving? So when you have this kind of a map very clear, then what you could start doing is, oh yeah, I need to expand in these verticals. So these verticals have these needs that we've discovered that nobody is really looking at. Their customers, they're not able to serve well because of 1, 2, 3, right? These are probably newer use cases.
Correct.
So when you approach it from that perspective, automatically the PMs need and will have to go and do deeper product thinking, that why, asking that question why and not what, right? I think that's where all the difference is in a more product thinking approach versus a project level thinking approach. So from there, what we do is then we identify like, okay, here are the potential opportunity areas. And then when you go down like to the next level, you say that, these opportunities could manifest as these kind of potential solutions.
Correct.
And then you like do the next level discovery and figure out, okay, what next and what next. And then, I mean, capabilities, features come much later, right? Like first you're constantly thinking about how will you solve for this problem that nobody is solving so far, right? So I would say that to me is product thinking, right? Like why is this important? What goals for customers and what goals for Mindtickle can be met? How will we differentiate with this, right? And then going after that problem from customer first perspective, from Mindtickle and revenue first perspective as well. That's what will eventually solve the problem. Versus a more project level thinking is, a customer, let's say, escalated something that just giving a hypothetical example here where, and we'll talk about features because sometimes these users just talk when they escalate something, they'll talk a feature language, right? That a manager is not able to, let's say, assign content in Mindtickle, and this is like a big gap for me, right? Like a project level thinking will say that, oh, okay, so, admins can assign content today. So you are saying that you would like managers to assign content. So we'll extend this capability to the managers and let's go and talk to engineering team and figure out what's the timeline, and then we go back with, okay, this is the timeline and this is when it'll be built, and escalation solved, right? Versus a product level thinking in the same scenario would be that, hey, why do you want a manager to assign content, right? Isn't a sales manager too bombarded with 100 other things? Where does that person have time to go search content, assign it, like ask people to do it? Then it comes to it that, oh, you know what? Yeah, maybe he doesn't have the time, but the context that a manager can provide, the direct frontline manager, that context maybe the other person doesn't have. So then it becomes like, oh, okay, so we cannot think in the same way of really giving them this capability versus the way the admins do it today, because this is a very different persona. Like, this is not their day to day. They are not coming on the platform to do this. So then how do you make it easy? So can AI tell them that, you know what, these are your sellers and they are probably not doing well on 1, 2, 3, and already recommend that, you know what, do you want to assign this kind of content, or do you want to quickly get them to pitch something back to you quickly because they didn't do well on a couple of calls? So then that solution, that imagination, that landscape is completely different. So I would say for people to build that kind of intuition, they really need to go deeper into the customer problem and understanding of each of the personas that we are serving, and what does their day-to-day look like, what they will care about, what they won't care about, what can be the hook for them, what can be the habit forming thing for them, what are their problems in a layered priority. And then that's when, if you're able to start understanding that, then you can definitely attack it from that persona first perspective. And I think that's what we typically try to do with our teams as well, where we'll get into these kind of more broader discovery kind of conversations
Correct.
With our customers to really inculcate this. We'll also, another thing that we do to build a good product intuition is, and I am still doing it personally as well. Like, I always look at Product Hunt top 10 products whenever I get time, right? Like, to constantly build my intuition as well, right? Like, what's really great about this product, what's working well, and then sort of dissecting it piece by piece. And, then I'll discuss this sometimes with a couple of PMs who share a similar flair for looking at different products, and then get their perspective on what did they think. And then from there also, we are sometimes taking away ideas for Mindtickle, right? Like, yeah, we could imagine, like, it's a completely different space and area, but you know what, we can imagine things this way for us as well. So yeah, those are a few things that we do.
Very interesting. You mentioned the blue ocean strategy, right? And Nikunj and I are reading this book, Competing Against Luck by Clayton Christensen.
Which one? Sorry, competing against?
Competing Against Luck.
Against luck, okay.
It
Yes.
covers the jobs theory, right? The
Yes.
famous or the infamous jobs theory. And he also talks the same thing, that a lot of the times you are competing with nothing. And it's, a product manager's job, or it's at least, the owner's job to figure out how to, what are the users actually, what do the users actually want, right? And a lot of the times you'll find that you're competing with nothing. But finding that point is really tough, right? That you are competing against non-consumption essentially, right? And that's where the magic happens. That's where the great PMs separate from the good PMs who are saying, "Kya Craig ne kiya, to hame bhi karna chahiye."
Correct. No, absolutely. And I think we are right now going down that rabbit hole ourselves as well, as we think about next year, what are those few areas that can help us in the next 18, 24 months, where we really say that this is our blue ocean.
Awesome, yeah.
Ankit, I have a follow-up on the second part. So see, I understand upstream thinking, and it's more about framing the problem and scoping the right problems to go after, right? But easier said than done, right? See, as a PM, how do I work on product discovery? I'll try to sort of get access to all the customer success tickets. For example, my existing clients and what are their problems, because these are clients I have access to. That's one bucket. The second bucket would be, obviously, as a product manager, I would want to be in a lot of sales calls, right? And you would want to make sure you have a sense of the pipeline, even calls that you might not even see going into, let's say, decently interested leads to, let's say, high intent lead, and very early you're essentially attending a lot of these calls, and you're trying to sort of piggybacking, hey, this is something that this company or this kind of contract could be close to our product or problem space that we are working in, and these are obviously way ahead, and something there could be an overlap with something in the future, right? So for you to even come up with a strategy, you have your multiple big bets to go after. Like I can obviously share my experience back in the haptic days and working in SaaS, but my like regular struggle back in the day was fundamentally, so there are these 4-5 big bets to go after, and there are these 4-5 constant sort of issues which are getting your existing customers. How do you sort of then prioritize? And I'm pretty sure you've been doing this for the last 1 year, right? Because where do you put your eggs? It's a how do you say this? Is essentially you building a conviction ki, hey, these are 3 ideas that I'm super confident about, and the basis for this is the research that you have done. And the other part of your roadmap, let's say 20-30% is a little open-ended, wherein you might take a risk. So do you sort of take those risks in a very 80-20 way, or do you sort of like plan your roadmap in a very conservative manner? Because I've seen a lot of companies in the 0 to 1 or just post product market fit stage be very risk obviously open to risk, and companies which have matured be very risk averse. Is it like that in your experience, or like?
So, I mean, when a company is a market leader in a particular space, right? And they've reached already, let's say they are top right of the quadrant in Gartner, Forrester, everywhere. I think at that stage, the company also needs to think that how will they continue to stay there for the next 5 years? And that thinking needs to happen today, right? To answer your question, right, like it's always a mix of, okay, these are the risks that we are going to take. But with these risks, right, as I mentioned earlier, that these are 3 growth levers that we'll be able to move with these risks. And that awareness that, this is going to happen with that hypothesis building and connecting it with a revenue goal is super critical, because then, I mean, even, and maybe something fails and not everything is going to work out well, right? But then that, okay, so maybe you're learning for the next time. In terms of the road mapping, what we typically do is we follow a now, next, later kind of a framework, where now is everything that we know for sure we are going to do, and, commitments to existing customers as well. Next is things that are, we have a high level worldview of it, but we haven't gone to the completely next level detail. And those are things where we have slight variation in terms of, let's say we see a different risk coming at us, then we have the chance to sort of shuffle that for something else. And then later are, maybe a couple of quarters later kind of things, which is a directional thinking for us, right? So typically what we do is we will not mess a lot with our now, with what you said, right? Like in terms of there are multiple priorities hitting at you. So we will always make sure that our now is solid and the value to the customer is very clear. It's clearly articulated as well. They know that this is coming, right? Like we do these QBRs with the customers where we are always sharing with them what's coming next on the roadmap. So those are the now items. The next items, and I would say where we want to play, and what is the next bet we want to take, all of those things. Also, we will participate in conversations with customers. Again, our customer advisory board will tell us what they think about like a certain idea. We'll go and do more conversations with some completely independent analysts, or we'll go and do conversations with non-customers as well to make sure that, you know, we are having this like a holistic worldview of things, right? And then the later ones are again very similarly are mostly things that are on our long-term horizon, blue ocean, our hypothesis on how we will grow in the next few years. So does that answer your question, Ankit?
Yeah. Obviously, I understand. It's essentially a mix of both. You cannot like put all your bets in one bucket. So I
Yes.
get it. But fundamentally, at least for me, the challenge has always been because you are always crunched with resources. So when you work, product managers work with sales and marketing, they would bombard you with the near, and now you have, let's say, set a roadmap for the next 3 months basis your preemptive understanding that you had set like 1 month prior, and now the sales pipeline is exposed to new set of clients, and let's say one client comes in which wherein the ARR could be, let's say, something that you have not reached, and a new big client. So do you then build for that, and how do you then balance that against something that you had already committed to
This
existing?
definitely comes up a lot, right? Like a new client with like, let's say 5 million ARR is
Yeah,
asking you for this one key feature without which they will not sign the contract,
exactly.
right? I mean, that's something that always happens. We've heard. But what we try to typically do is, we know that this is a new big customer. They're not going to deploy tomorrow. They'll come in, the deal will close, there'll be a deployment time, there'll be implementation. And this is probably not the first thing, because I mean, how can that be the first thing that somebody needs on day one, right? Like, because you are running a functional product for so many years. So they'll have that need, but they'll have that need after maybe again like a few months of they starting on the platform, unless it's a critical integration without which, you know, absolutely things cannot move. But apart from that, like, what we then try to do is like then accommodate that in our next and later buckets, right? Because there is place there is leeway, there is room to navigate through. But what we've tried to do, at least this year, is like more than 87% adherence to what we will say we will do every quarter. We've done that every quarter. And that's possible only when, you know, you don't let these kind of things come and hijack your roadmap. So yeah, it's critical to then see at what point in time you're able to sort of accommodate some of these things.
Really well said. I totally understand. It's not about here and now. You want to give them that feature right away, and there's like a gestation period wherein the contract will get signed and they will come in, start using it, onboarding. So it could be somewhere in the future. So I get it where you're coming from.
Shweta, I want to talk to you about Gen AI, right? This year we have seen, it has witnessed significant developments in AI, particularly in the context of generative AI. Could you outline the major opportunities, or let's say, as we said, the blue ocean that Mindtickle is pursuing by harnessing AI capabilities, right? If it would be great if we can dive deeper into specific problems or challenges you are addressing with AI, right?
Yeah, sure. And we've taken a slightly different approach than how we saw most people doing it, where, you know, people coming out with one capability on Gen AI and then saying that, okay, we are doing Gen AI. So it was like a more Me Too thing that we saw happen from March to August of this year, where, you know, every day you'll see someone saying that, oh, I'm doing Gen AI too. So our approach, like what we felt was that this was a great opportunity for us to leapfrog on several things that, you know, may have been part of, let's say, a 12-month roadmap, right? Like Gen AI just came in and accelerated things for us and helped us reimagine in terms of how we can improve the lives and the jobs for each of our key personas, whether it's the seller, it's the manager, it's the admin, it's the RevOps person, whoever is it, right? Like, what is our 10x product hypothesis for them? I think it helped us reimagine and recalibrate that. Right now, everybody, like, time is the most scarce resource in all of these personas' lives, right? So I think the first thing that we went after is that how can we get uh, more out of less for them with Gen AI, right? Because just saying that we are our capabilities are now using Gen AI at the back of it, that's not going to be any innovation, no disruption. Like, this technology is available to everybody, so nobody is going to be able to leapfrog with this alone, right? So our way of harnessing this has been to focus on the critical high ROI, high frequency, and high time consuming kind of use cases that solve for our personas in very connected ways. So we are not solving, okay, one problem here and one problem there, and then the third problem there. If you are able to imagine in the user's journey, like an end-to-end journey, these are the three
Correct.
biggest places where, they are spending a lot of time, and suddenly you're saying that, boom, they don't have to do any of these three. AI is going to help them. I think that's what leverage can bring then to them, right? So how can we automate busy work, and then how
Correct.
can we really help them with their strategic thinking, strategic tasks as well. So we prioritize what's the most important, frequent to the user base that drives like an order of magnitude change in the user experience that then eventually helps with their elevation as well, right? So we went after, and again, like initially as we were leveraging this technology, we thought of making sure that we are minimizing the cost of error, right? Like, we didn't want to fall into that trap where what we are solving for has a very high cost of error, and then the adoption suffers because of that. So we went after use cases which are keeping the humans in the center, front and center of AI as well, right? So we are enabling them. Eventually, that final decision in terms of whether to uh, publish what AI has created, whether to leverage the insights and do something next with that, whether to look at this summary and then push it somewhere else and take next steps, or whether to look at this email and send it or add more context.
Correct.
All of like that decision making we kept mostly with the users, so that that we're not playing with the cost of error at that point, right? And I think a clever and consistent UX where at no point should AI feel as more cognitive load, because it's there to
Exactly.
improve their lives, reduce the time, right? So a lot of attention was spent on a very clever UX that made them feel that what they are now doing is a breeze compared to how they were used to doing that in a more traditional way on our platform, right? So we wanted to have them experience that aha and that delight that, oh wow, like I can't imagine that this is done, right? And the kind of feedback that we've heard from our customers also is that, oh, you know what, that thing that I had to build manually earlier, like let's say for example we have this assessments within our platform, right, where based on all the content programs modules, you're then creating the right questions to evaluate people, then having the options. So there's one right option, but then there are others. So it's very hard for people to think, okay, what should the incorrect option be, and what should be the style, how difficult should be, where do I source these questions? Like all of that was like a trouble, and that's how it was being done anyways across the industry, right? Manually, you're building this. So with generative AI, we were able to automate that whole process of standing up like an entire assessment from scratch. And like admins, they're blown away. They're like, oh my God, this is like a significant value add time saver for me, right? So I think that's just one example, but yeah, I mean, all of these people have very limited time to execute, right? So Mindtickle's Copilot is built to support everyone in the revenue team so that they can focus on delivering the tailored experience to their customers, buyers, and secure more revenue, right? So it just helps every single persona, and we feel that scratched the surface of what's possible with it. And we're taking, like as I said before also, like a very human-centered and a privacy-oriented approach. So yeah, I think those, I mean, I can talk more about what else we are doing as well, right? Like we are using the Copilot to create more role-playing scenarios and video pitches to message the right kind of uh, pitch to their customers when they eventually do it, right? And again, we are having AI to also review these role play submissions, and wherever managers, I mean, need to do it, they could be another reviewer too, but Copilot does the first review already for them. So, insights are all there. We are helping sales managers use Copilot for deal analysis based on the call recordings, and really see what objections did the prospects have, or whether ex-competitor was mentioned on the call. So basically the responses to this can help the reps basically self-coach themselves and perform better. And then analysis, like instead of going to 10 different reports, we have this chat interface where you could just ask questions on, how did these sellers performed with this particular program, or which region is struggling with discovery skills, right? So that way, as I said earlier, right, like we are hitting the 10x hypothesis for every persona and their key jobs, and making sure that they are much more efficient in the tasks that they do, so that more time is then given back to them for more strategic planning.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Shweta. I love the enthusiasm when when you started talking about your product, and I think we should have asked this question first upfront. And we end all our podcast episodes with this question. This is not part of a script, but fundamentally, it's more from our PM school students, right? A lot of our students are applying to B2B companies, and they would want to understand from a hiring manager's perspective, right? So let's say if you are interviewing, what is your criteria? And there are these roles that people come across, and if you can sort of just help first is like understand, for example, if you're applying for a role which is, let's say, helping a SaaS company be enterprise ready, right? Think of senior product manager or even product manager roles at enterprise platform companies, or to even growth centric product manager roles. Maybe you might be looking at a different set of skill sets. So from a hiring perspective, you are let's say hiring for a 0 to 1 to, let's say, platform team. If there is like some overlap and you would want to sort of tell candidates like PM school students that, hey, these are the 3 things that you should learn and get better at, what would that be?
So I typically have like this whole career framework, and some of the skills specified in terms of when we are also interviewing, what we typically look out for. And honestly, it's a bunch of different things, but I would say absolutely critical is ability to do a good discovery, because unlike in B2C, where data will just tell you, it will give it away that this is the problem, or this is not, this is a funnel drop, or this is how someone has done this. In B2B, it's very, very hard for pure data to just tell you the full story about it. Yes, it will give you an indicative direction, but it will not tell you the full story. So for people to really understand, I think a balance of qualitative and quantitative is important, and hence how well somebody is able to do discovery becomes super critical. Second, I would say uh, whether B2C or B2B, I think creativity is a very important part also the um of the fact what differentiates a good PM from a great PM is how creative they are able to think, and what's the extent of their imagination. At the same time, the awareness on what is possible technologically today. So
Hmm.
if somebody was attempting something which needed large language models about 2 years back, then you know what they would have, it would have been a good creative brainstorming exercise, but it wouldn't have got them so far. So I would say creativity with at the intersection of understanding that can technology enable this solution that I'm thinking so creatively about right now. I'm not saying deep tech understanding, that's good, but not, I wouldn't say that's like a must have, but at least like a general awareness of whether that can be supported at this time or not. I would say that's very, very critical. And the third thing, which becomes very hard to gauge in the interview, but that's something that again like differentiates the good from great, is the execution muscle uh, itself, right? So yeah, we put out the roadmap, it's great, but are we able to follow through? And are we able to eliminate the roadblocks that come in, which come in every single day? And how they are able to eventually influence so many other stakeholders who nobody reports into the PM, right? So I think it eventually boils down also to their influencing skills with others on, you know, really getting them aligned on the why versus telling them what to do, right? So that that will again be a key to success. So I think those are 3, 4 things I would say super critical. And then there are a lot of other competencies as well. But these are some things that, you know, a little hard to teach if not there in place from beginning. So hence, I mean, there are, it's like nature versus nurture, you know, other things, PRD, if somebody is not writing specifications properly, you can teach that and you can, you know, give them 10 examples of how to do this. Or someone has lack of quality focus, you know, you can set certain KPIs that was with this release, next release, I want like a zero defect leakage into production. So those kind of things can be enforced. But
Yeah.
these things, I think they they will develop over time, but a
Hmm.
little slow process if you have to work with people to develop them.
Understood. Thank you. 3 words for me. Discovery, like obviously your stress on how do you do product discovery. The creativity side of things, I think more towards solutioning. How would you solution and having that awareness of like tech trends and at least having 10,000 feet knowledge of what all is possible and what all is not. And the third thing, essentially, as you anchor, right, being able to influence across different teams, especially in B2B, I think is super important. Um,
Yes.
Thank you, Shweta. That's it for today.